All right, let's just jump right into it. Today, we are tackling something, well, something incredibly ambitious. It's called the Schmidt unified theory. And this isn't just another theory of everything from physics, you know? The goal here, from its creator Rudolf Klaus Schmidt, is way bigger. He's proposing a fundamental grammar for reality itself.
So the source material kicks things off with this really cryptic German phrase. It translates to, "The world arises when this sentence passes away." I mean, right away, that sets a pretty deep philosophical tone, doesn't it? It's a clue that we're not just going to be talking about particles and forces. No, this is about the very rules that make it possible to even describe existence at all.
Okay, so what's the actual goal? What's the point of all this? Well, the idea is to build a framework that's so fundamental that it can describe literally everything. We're talking about the motion of a galaxy and the process of you having a thought, all using the same simple universal set of rules. It's basically an attempt to create one single coherent language for all of reality. So to build a language this big, where do you even begin? Well, the theory starts with 3 core axioms. But you shouldn't think of these as just regular physics laws. They're more like the unbreakable grammatical rules that govern absolutely any action or event that could ever happen. All right, let's break these down. First, you've got the law of movement. Super simple, right? Anything that moves, doesn't matter if it's a tiny photon or a giant planet, it has to follow some kind of path. It's universal. You can't escape it. Second, there's the law of thinking. Now this is interesting. It basically says that any kind of thinking, remembering something, solving a problem, it's all just information processing. This is huge because it makes thought something physical, something measurable. And finally, you have the law of time and energy. This is the glue. It says that both moving and thinking need energy, and they both take time. It's like the thermodynamic engine that makes the whole show run.
Now, with those 3 simple laws in place, this is where things get really interesting, because the theory uses them to build a completely new, kind of radical model of reality. We're moving beyond just a set of rules now. We're talking about an actual geometric structure.
And this gets right to the heart of the problem that the theory is trying to crack. You know, for 100 years, physics has been tearing its hair out trying to connect the world of the super big with the world of the super small. Schmidt's theory says, hey, what if the answer isn't just more equations? What if it's a single, unified, geometric object? So on one side, you have the macrocosmos, right? The massive scale of the universe we can see. And on the other, you have the microcosmos, that weird, probabilistic quantum realm. The big question has always been, how on earth do you get these two to play nice? How do you fit one inside the other?
The model kicks off by drawing a line in the sand for the macro world. It calls this the cosmological sphere. And its size, its radius, is just the speed of light multiplied by the age of the universe. Now, this isn't some kind of physical shell out there in space. Think of it more like an information boundary. It's the absolute edge of everything we could ever hope to see or know about.
Okay, now let's zoom all the way in to define the micro world. This is the Planck block sphere. Its radius is how far light can travel in one single unit of Planck time, which is like the absolute shortest tick-tock the universe's clock can make. This tiny sphere represents the most basic unit of quantum information, of pure potential. It's the fundamental Lego brick of reality. Okay, so how does the theory actually connect these two vastly different spheres? This is the magic trick. It's called the world uniting act. So picture the radius of the universe, that unimaginably long line stretching from the center out to the edge. Now, and this is the key, imagine that line isn't a line. The theory says it's something from geometry called a fiber bundle. It's like an infinitely thick cable made up of countless tiny threads. And here's the mind-blowing part. Every single one of those microscopic threads is a whole Planck block sphere. The macro scale is literally woven out of the microscale. And this whole new construction, this unified thing, the theory just calls it U.
And of course, you can't have a grand theory without a grand equation, right? This is it. This formula is what describes the physics happening inside this new unified object. It's the math that ties together the movement, the information, and that energy-time cost from those 3 laws we talked about earlier. Basically, it's the master rule for every possible state within this new unified space.
So here's the really crucial takeaway from all this. In this model, a particle isn't at a certain place while also being in a certain state. No, its location and its quantum state are fused together. They become just a single point inside this bigger, higher dimensional object, U. That classic separation between where something is and what something is, it just dissolves.
Okay, so with this whole framework built, the theory doesn't just sit there.
It goes on the attack. It starts to critique, and it takes aim at some of the most sacred, foundational ideas in modern physics.
First up on the chopping block, the vacuum of space. You know, mainstream physics usually treats it like a perfect void, right? Just an empty stage where all the action of the universe happens. But this theory comes along and challenges that basic assumption. So the standard view sees the vacuum as that empty stage. It's a really useful idea. It makes the math a lot cleaner. But Schmidt's critique, and this comes straight from the source material, says that an experiment in a vacuum is basically a contradiction in terms. Think about it. The second you stick a detector, or an observer, into the vacuum to see what's happening, well, it's not a vacuum anymore, is it? The very act of looking fills the empty space you were trying to measure.
All right, next up, the theory sets its sights on maybe the most famous equation in the history of science. It's elegant, it's powerful, but the question this theory poses is it the whole story?
So the standard interpretation is that E equals mc squared tells you how much energy is locked inside a particle that's just sitting still. But the critique from this theory is that it's a static formula for a reality that's always in motion. It argues the whole equation relies on two ideas that might just be fictions. One, a perfectly empty vacuum, which we just questioned, and two, a state of absolute perfect rest. And according to the theory's own first law of movement, nothing is ever truly at rest. So the argument is, the equation is a brilliant, brilliant thought experiment, but maybe not a fundamental law for a universe that's constantly on the move.
And that brings us to the final part of all this. And honestly, it's the most mind-bending piece of the puzzle. The theory doesn't just claim to describe reality, it claims to be a logically complete and self-validating system.
The theory basically issues a direct challenge to anyone who doubts it, and the source material puts it just like this. It sounds simple, but the implications are, well, they're pretty profound.
Okay, check out the logic here. Let's say you want to try and disprove these laws. Well, what are you doing? You're performing an action. And any action, even just thinking about it, involves moving concepts around in your head along some logical path. Boom, that's the law of movement. It involves processing information. Yep, that's the law of thinking. And it takes your brain energy and a little bit of time to do it. That's the law of time and energy. So the very act of trying to test the laws confirms the laws. You're forced to use the framework to try and break it.
And this leads to this really powerful conclusion that the source calls causally hermetic, which is a fancy way of saying it's a perfectly sealed logical loop. You can never step outside the system to analyze it from a distance, because the very act of analyzing is an act inside the system. It means we are all participants in this reality. We're never just neutral spectators. And so this is where we land. We're left with this final, really fascinating question. Is this thing the ultimate grammar of reality itself? Or is it a perfectly constructed logical fortress, so brilliantly designed that it's impossible to prove it wrong from the inside? I think the big takeaway here isn't about finding a final answer. It's about giving us a brand new, powerful way to question the very structure of reality and our inescapable role within it.